Good morning, everyone. I want for a few moments to bring my personal experience, and hopefully by doing this, speak for the patient whose needs are at the heart of all these discussions. I have been involved in the past 30 years at different levels in the care of my sister, my mother, my husband, and my sister-in-law. I, like many family members, would never have considered myself a carer. And I think that is the experience of many families. This informal care in itself can lead to a lack of knowledge, a reticence in accessing services, and isolation, all of which have the potential to impact adversely on the quality of life available to the patient. I propose to share a little about my own experiences, how the care was handled, what went wrong, and what could and should have been improved. My sister was a 47-year-old radiographer who in the first instance diagnosed herself with pancreatic cancer and lived a total of 5.5 weeks after this was confirmed. I nursed her every day of those traumatic 5.5 weeks, during which her husband refused to confront the diagnosis, her children were not allowed to know, and the Marie Curie nurses were denied access in case the neighbours saw the uniform. Added to this, the consultant in the hospital stood at the end of my sister's bed, told her the diagnosis, and adding there was nothing they could do for her. He then left, taking hope with him. That was brutal in the extreme. Two bright spots, however, at that time were the kindness shown to me personally by the Marie Curie organization. I visited them and told them my story, and each morning before setting out, I would ring them, and they resolved many of the day-to-day difficulties with honesty, clarity, and kindness. My mother was taken into a nursing home for the last 4 years of her 96-year-old lifespan, and I was unable to look after her myself. And the word home, while the facility was rated as well above the average, was a misnomer. In a home, they don't lose your clothes, treat you like a number, and assume that everybody likes bingo and a sing-song. The good points of this experience were that when the end came, we were given the choice of remaining in the home or going to hospital, and we chose to keep her in the home for the last week of her life, when we could sit with her and talk as long as she was able. This was quite a few years ago, but the point I want to make is that the guilt which I felt about being unable to look after her still weighs very heavily with me. The care of the family needs to be part of the palliative care picture to allow it to function. And as the name suggests, from the Latin, to be a cloak to wrap around, protect, and comfort. My husband was wrongly diagnosed with Parkinson's and was treated accordingly for over 3 years. Other symptoms were largely ignored, and when I discussed these with his GP, I was told he could only deal with one condition at a time. His mobility declined, and eventually he was wheelchair bound. I happened to be chatting to a lady from the Parkinson's Society and told her about David with a view to him becoming a member and so accessing information. She was able to tell me he would have to have a diagnosis from a consultant and not the GP. And I organised this. We met with the consultant on the Wednesday, and David dropped dead at my feet on the Friday from a massive heart attack, which possibly could have been avoided. The bright spot in that picture is that the consultant wrote to me, invited me to come and see her, and discussed the case with me. That brought a lot of comfort to me. The outcome may not have been different, but we could and should have had access to assistance and guidance appropriate to his needs. I come to the last one you'll be glad to hear. My sister-in-law is a 97-year-old with independence written through her like a stick of rock. She lives on her own in the middle of a lovely London square. She gets cabin fever if she has to stay in more than one day and has suffered from rheumatoid arthritis for decades. Her mobility is very much compromised now, but her spirit remains as solid as a rock. I'm her phone carer almost every day and several visits a year as well. Why am I listing this among my stories? She got very agitated about a year ago that all her papers were not sorted out, and as I hold her power of attorney, she thought it was time to put things in order. So I went over, disposed of 10 sacks of papers to a firm of confidential waste disposers, and then saw her solicitor. He gave us great advice and a memorandum of wishes form. This form lists everything from where to find the relevant papers, what needs to be done at the end of life, who should be informed, and indeed who should get all the little bequests not listed in the will. What a transformation that made to my sister-in-law when we had it all completed and lodged with the solicitor. She immediately stopped being anxious and concentrated on where the next art exhibition was being held. She is a very competent artist, attends college every Friday, and has had her work exhibited in the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition. Not bad for a 97-year-old. How and what we need to change. Communication is the big thing. This runs through all those little snippets I've shared with you. We need a greater culture of sharing by conversation. Most of the conversations in palliative care are difficult, but need to happen. So we need to find a way to approach them. Recognition. We need to be able to recognize the isolation of the person at the center of this situation and be able and willing to be the hand to hold on to. Knowledge. We need access to the knowledge of what is available in terms of practical assistance at each stage of the journey. And to that end, I would recommend the All-Ireland Institute of Hospice and Palliative Care Hub, which I'm sure Karen will tell you all about later in the programme. Another publication is the PHA's booklet, which I've dubbed the Northern Ireland Bible of Palliative Care. Unfortunately, it is just as weighty. I would love to see this in every household and wonder if this is something that the council might undertake to distribute. And lastly, we need to give the patient peace of mind in preparing for the future. My message today to everyone involved in palliative care, the strategists, the researchers, the clinicians, and the carers: be positive, be practical, be pragmatic, be perceptive. Life is precious, all of it.